Welcome to IMAGI-NATION TV. My name is Emily Brooker and I am the Imagination President for Townsville. It has been a roller coaster of ups and downs throughout 2021, but I've loved every second of being the Townsville President, especially being able to get to know some of the local high school kids and get to know their amazing stories. I am currently studying at uni to be a high school teacher with minors in biology and history, and I absolutely love it. When I'm not at home studying or at work, you can generally find me down the creek having a fish or going for a swim. I love getting outside after being cooped up studying. I'm so excited for today's episode because we are asking the question, what is imagination? We're talking about teachers and citizens and how they can organise change through IMAGI-NATION University.
Emily, I'm your co-host. I'm Matthew Stokes and I work at AIME and been here for 8 years. I'm a Larrakia boy from the Northern Territory, so used to the beautiful sun, unfortunately now based in Geelong in the freezing cold. So that's a little bit about me. Hopefully I don't get interrupted by my two young kids coming through at some stage during this, but IMAGI-NATION Citizens Pathway is a way of allies being able to commit together to be able to alleviate inequality. This can be in whatever way feels supported into helping each other through that. Through IMAGI-NATION University Teachers can utilise the learnings of AIME and what we've learned over 16 to 17 years of hard work to unlocking the power of being able to engage in exercises to help our kids to bring imagination to the classroom. So before we hand over to our panel, we'll show to a video.
Let's imagine
what a free and just world looks like. Let's imagine
a university free for all,
with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere.
Let's imagine
a social network for good.
A bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works.
Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class,
we see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students,
teachers, executives, citizens
coming together to work on a curriculum designed for a future that we hope to build. Now, imagine.
It's happening right here. And you're invited.
Welcome to IMAGI-NATION University, brought to you by AIME, the Imagination Factory.
Applications are open now.
So guys, I'd love you to our panelists to introduce yourself and maybe give us a little bit of an insight on who you are and what you do. So Jarryd, maybe start with you, mate.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. And wow, some exciting people here. I'm glad to be a part of it. So my name's Jarryd Bendall. I used to be a primary school teacher and I now work for Cool Australia. And it's a not-for-profit, sort of working in the online education curriculum design space, looking to, expand the way we teach.
Thanks very much, Jarryd. Jesse, what about yourself, mate?
Thanks, Matty. Yeah, my name's Jesse King. I'm a one-year man from far northwestern Queensland. Living in Townsville and Bendall, Brooker country. I work for the Stronger Smarter Institute, which is an Indigenous education institute that's about working with teachers to transform Indigenous educational outcomes for our young ones by hitting the heart to ignite the brain and bringing together the personal spheres, the community sphere, and the school sphere to really put innovative solutions into engaging our young ones.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it, mate. And give us a little bit of insight to you, Grace.
Hey, I'm Grace. I'm from Canberra. So I'm one of the Canberra IMAGI-NATION presidents. I got involved through an internship at the University of Canberra. So right now we're looking to get back into schools, get that post-lockdown mentoring going again, and set up a student club at UC to hopefully gather some more interest for mentoring.
And Grace, I can't help but notice that you have Arnie behind you. Is there any significance for that?
It's not my room, it's my boyfriend's room. So doesn't have any significance for me, but seems to have a lot for him.
Fair enough. And Mahim, you're in Bangladesh. How you going, mate?
Hello everyone. I'm Mahim. I'm a 70-year-old boy from Bangladesh, and I realized one quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is featured behind Grace, and he said, "If you don't have a vision, if you don't know where you are going, you drift around and end up nowhere." And I think that imagination helps us to have that dream, have that vision in our life. And I'm a high school student. I love playing guitar, and I love also play cricket. I'm a great fan of Stephen Smith, and I love to explore the interdisciplinary field of knowledge. And through that, with the help of AIME, I have founded EduWriters Foundation, which is a foundation of the children, by the children, and for the children. And currently, I'm working with kids with different passions and interests, and it is very incredible to work with kids with the help of AIME. Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for having. We must get stuck straight into it to our first question. And the first question that we have for the panelists are, how can teachers bring Indigenous knowledges into the classroom, and how can people look into incorporate Indigenous knowledges into their work? So maybe Jesse, we'll start off with you.
Nice, easy one for me, hey, Matt?
Happy right, brother?
Yeah, look, it's I think for teachers, asking the question and having a go is something a lot of people want to do, but making sure they're doing it in a way that's respectful and responsive to their kids. So teachers need to take that time to learn a bit about the local place where they are, learn about what's going on, what's a bit of the socio-cultural context in that community, and then work out, find those allies in their school. Usually most schools will have deadly low First Nations mob connected to or connected within, and just having that yarn about where do you start and what sort of what's appropriate in that context. So and from there, it can really become anything we could imagine, because from having that yarn and doing it the right way, we can take it through to on-country learning experiences, breaking down those four walls of the classroom, and learning experiences that don't only engage First Nation students, but engage all kids in active hands-on learning. So I think having a bit of an understanding of what it means and where you might want to go, and then having that yarn with someone who's connected to the community to work out what's a good step forward is a great start for teachers.
Yeah, that's amazing insight, Jesse. Thanks for that. Mahim, I'm actually interested to listen to what you have to say on this. You there, Mahim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that throughout my life, I have tried to explore different sectors of knowledge, and what I have realized is that we should not divide knowledge and imagination in some particular subjects. And I think the true success of the development of the civilization lies in practicing interdisciplinary field of knowledge. So I have explored, during my childhood, I explored religions, major religions. Then I spent much time with science and worked with many scientific projects. And then I fell in love with literature history, and we are now working to launch our first ever online magazine. So yeah, and throughout the journey, I have personally experienced the importance of imagination, because imagination is the very thing that connects us with our ancestors and connects us with the people who will come after us. Because imagination helps us to be the designer, engineer, and creator of our own world, where we can make our own rules and regulations, where we can build the world that we want to have in real life. And imagination, I think, is the fuel that drives us to some betterment. And imagination is the first step towards any work, because if I cannot imagine the whole roadmap, if I cannot imagine the whole journey that I want to take, it will be very easier to walk along that road. So yeah, imagination. And I think that as I work with kids, kids are the most imaginative age group of this world. So imagination drives us to passion, and passion drives us to walk along the road.
Thanks, man. That's an amazing way to look at it. Grace, your thoughts on this?
Well, when I reflect on like my own high school experience, which was only a few years ago, I really wish that you know, we'd had more engaging kind of Indigenous studies from teachers, because, you know, it's one thing to kind of regurgitate all this history, which of course is essential to know and understand and appreciate. You know, I wish that, you know, Indigenous studies had the same attention paid to it as maybe like, you know, art and, you know, drama and all that kind of really engaging stuff, because if you're not engaged with something, then you're not gonna, you know, retain much of that knowledge, or, you know, imagine about how you can use that in the future, or how you can get involved with, you know, Indigenous studies, or, you know, something like that. So I just like to see in schools and, you know, teachers kind of encouraging that, you know, engaging hands-on kind of studies like they do with everything else.
Yeah, absolutely, Grace. I couldn't agree with that more. Now, Jarryd, I guess I'll let you answer that question as well, but maybe then talk into the content from, you know, what you guys do from Call Australia and what you found most useful in that aspect.
Yeah, well, it's sort of great to hear from Grace, who's sort of, I guess, the next generation that's coming on, you know, thinking about my grandma and even my parents, where I guess that passion or interest or respect wasn't always there for this kind of topic and introducing it into their classrooms. So it's fantastic to hear that that's the way we're heading. And as Mahim said, like, it doesn't have to live isolated on its own in this kind of, you know, this tourism approach of we'll have a bit of a look, but then we'll go off to the next thing. And I think, reflecting on what Jesse said, like, there's a lot of barriers. A lot of teachers have created their own barriers, I think, when it comes to approaching this, and we want to do it respectfully. As Jesse said, it's getting in touch with your kind of local and around your own specific area, because that's where I am in Melbourne. It's very different to where he is, even Geelong. You know, there's differences between the two sort of the content we're going to cover. So look, I think that's the challenge. Like, we've got a long way to go. We are treading, I guess, lightly, but you know, trying to really push the threshold, because yeah, I definitely feel for teachers who you know, from their own schooling have no idea, have only just been introduced to this. In a way, they want to do it right. They want to do it properly and respectfully, and give, you know, always building so that the next students to come through are doing better. But yeah, Jesse, I guess I'm interested in the barriers that that you think exist when approaching this content, and sort of maybe if you have a advice on how to approach it.
Yeah, thanks, Jarryd. Look, I think we could spend a lot of time focusing on the barriers and why we shouldn't do something. But I think in the, you know, to putting imagination first, and what Mahim was saying, if we don't imagine what we can achieve and where we can get to, then we're going to limit ourselves. So looking at all of the things that are there and why we can do it, why we should do it, and acknowledging that the barriers are systemic. The barriers are put in place by the different systems of control within Australia and within other global areas that have undergone a sort of colonization processes. So what we've got to look at is how do we decolonize our thinking and our approaches to look at a more holistic point of view to engage in what can create a better future. And why, as Australians and as a First Nations Australian, why shouldn't we should all be very proud of having the longest living sustaining culture on earth, and that's something that all Australians should be proud of and respect, and have those opportunities to learn about it, because it'll lead to a richer and a more harmonic society that's able to understand that we all bring these different pieces of history, but we're all grounded on country and we're all connected to country wherever we are in the world. So the knowing stuff is one thing, but having the skills to be able to gain that knowledge is probably the next step. So it's sort of like, is it knowledge or is it skills? That's something we do at Stronger Smarter, is we're about working on processes and working on ways of working together and ways to respond to complex challenges and create those solutions grounded in that context. Because each school is very different, each community is different, everywhere has its own, and we're never going to be able to import a solution in. Solutions have to be created from the people who are there on the ground. So how do we put those opportunities in front of each other? And just like what Grace was saying, we got to flip the thinking around that this subject is here and this subject's here and this is here and there, and just look at what are the engaging learning activities are good for everyone and are going to teach a whole range of different things, not just siloed off into science or siloed off into English, and that's where real world problems and using our imagination to come up with novel approaches to education. The curriculum does give us a lot of opportunities to do it. Know your content and know how to teach it, and the standards and the structures. So how do we stretch those to respond to us rather than us having to respond to them all the time would be the question I'll throw out to the mob on the panel, my deadly panel around me.
I definitely couldn't agree with you more, Jesse. I completely agree with that. Emily, before you start to ask the questions to the panelists, I'd love to get your thoughts on this being an aspiring future teacher in itself. What are your thoughts on it?
I think, I recently just finished my second prac at a local high school, so like fresh knowledge in my head. But I found that when you're in a classroom, especially like for myself being a pre-service teacher, so I don't have years of teaching experience behind me and stuff. I do have all this knowledge of local Indigenous culture, and through AIME, I've been able to get local connections to elders and things like that, but incorporating it into like curriculum activities. Specifically, I teach a lot of like science, say, and looking at how you like fundamentally can implement local Indigenous perspectives and things into the actual content. Because I have a passion for Indigenous culture. I think there's so much that we can learn, and so many interesting things that people should know about. And I agree with what Grace said. I think a lot more should be done in school to teach Indigenous perspectives, and like as a way of helping students appreciate their local culture, because a lot of students are unaware. And if we make them aware and then they have that opportunity to appreciate it, it's just finding the resources and, like you mentioned before, the barriers, trying to work through those. And that's where I think Jarryd and Jessie are doing a great job to help us get there. So yeah, that was.
Well, so Elena, over to you to ask the panel some questions.
I'll ask Jarryd, what is your message to aspiring educators? Like, what would you like to see more of, like classroom, resource, anything?
Yeah, have you got 20 hours to talk about that? I think like we've really touched on this kind of thread of, and I feel for graduate teachers such as yourself and sort of Grace, where you're kind of in this environment and it's really hard sometimes to do your job. It's really hard the way classrooms are set up, the expectations of your principal. You might have fellow teachers around you that have been there for 30 years who are set in their kind of way of doing this. And that's not to say, you know, teachers at their heart, I think, are learners as well. So they want to improve, learn new things, try new things. But, you know, even if these past few years have taught us anything, again, what happens when we're suddenly out of the classroom? We can't interact with kids. You know, what's the next thing that will happen? And in some ways, I think, Jessie sort of mentioned the knowledge and then the critical thinking skills to kind of be able to work it and implement it. So you can know something, and Maddie can tell me how to kick a footy, but if I can't do it for myself, well, you know, I'm useless. So I think we're trying to teach kids, and this is Cool's focus. We're trying to really teach kids how to think and learn for themselves. And part of that really comes from like a social action perspective. At the end of the day, we don't want, I think you can take a really shallow approach to teaching and that rubs off on your kids straight away. So if you come in and you just say, well, we're going to learn 2 + 2, and once you know that, see you later, you know, or we'll pass you on to, you know, the next grade. And so you go all the way up the grades till year 12, and then you're out in the world. What we want to do is not start with the what, but start with the why. So it's like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we learning this? And then what can we do with it? So giving, especially young people, these challenges of, okay, the world is changing. The world is not really my world anymore, you know? So it's up to students as we're passing on. We're going to guide you through this, but what are the social actions you can take after you've learnt this? And how can we set you up to be a really confident and skilled operator so that when I'm gone and when you have to be doing things on your own, you'll be equipped and feel ready to do that.
Perfect. I love that. Mahim, do you have any thoughts, any messages that you would give to aspiring educators?
I have personally realized that that when after a child is born and when he passed through his adolescence and childhood, he has a beginner's mind. He has that power of imagining a fair world, a good world for him. And after that, as Jarryd was saying that, and Jessie was saying that we should not categorize subjects. Yes, this is good, this is bad, this is superior, this is inferior. So all of a sudden, they lost their capacity of imagining how they want the world to behave with them, how they want that world to work. So when I was working with that, I heard a word which is a Jain Buddhism word, which is called SHOHAN. That means that having that beginner's mind. When I was a kid, yes, I personally feel that, yes, I had a beginner mind. I found curiosity and imagination everywhere around me. But we go through that the same curriculum, we shift from growth mindset to fixed mindset, and we start stopping imagining how the world I want to be, I want to live. Instead of that, we tend to go through the similar process. So yeah, if we have that beginner's mind all the time, if we have imagination with us, only then we can truly prosper. And as I have said earlier, the true success of this development of this human civilization lies in practicing interdisciplinary field of knowledge more and more. Not a particular subject, but a realm of knowledge.
Cool, love that. Thank you, Mahim. Grace, I have a question for you. What is your take on imagination in the education system or in creating change, and why do you think it's something we need to focus
on? Well, if my psychology degree has taught me anything, it's that, you know, we're constantly thinking, and if we think just according to textbooks and what's told to us, you're never going to elevate your mindset. So we start developing imaginative thinking from when we're 15 months old, and it's incredibly important that like teachers nurture this creative thinking, not just through the early years, but even through high school, through university. It's very, very important because it develops our self-esteem, our self-confidence, especially, you know, these kids that, you know, I'm going into schools and mentoring and stuff that want to, you know, Indigenous kids who might not have the self-esteem or self-confidence to pursue higher education. It's something that nurtures this inside of them. And so if teachers can really encourage that, then you can dream bigger, you can set bigger goals for yourself. And, you know, what do they say? If you shoot for the moon, you miss, you like fall amongst the stars. It's like that kind of concept. Like, you know, you got to set big goals, and imagination is what sets those big goals for you. And, you know, teachers play a really crucial role in helping you try and do that.
Grace, I love that, and that's exactly what AIME is all about, is being able to strive for greater and be something that you've always wanted to be. But Jarryd, Cool Australia, I mean, how do you feel, or how are you thinking of working in with the IMAGI-NATION University next year?
Yeah, well, it's just such an exciting concept because I love the approach to sort of these mentors, you know, who are bringing their knowledge, bringing their skills. The rising tide kind of lifts all boats, you know. So I think, yeah, it's fascinating that just the way that AIME has decided, whilst they're still operating in that education space, of course, but they're just like, what, instead of having this big anchor on our backs and, you know, what are we mandated to teach and do? AIME's just saying, well, what are the absolute possibilities? Where can we go from here? And I think especially, you know, in some of our talks with AIME and internally, we're like, well, what about the students that a regular approach sort of doesn't fit? You know, if you've kind of got that net that you're hauling through the ocean, and it's a specific type of net, it's going to catch some specific fish, but it's just got big holes in it that other students are going to sort of leak through. So I love the way AIME is sort of setting out to challenge us to be like, okay, think as absolutely big as you can. And as Grace said, you know, let's not go to the moon, let's go to Mars, let's go to Pluto. We're not going to get there, perhaps, but, you know, we're going to probably discover something new and awesome along the way. And that's going to work for a student who we haven't perhaps originally or traditionally been able to reach. So yeah, we're just excited about the possibilities and the challenging of that imaginative thinking.
Yeah, Jarryd, I think absolutely agree with that. And then Jesse, I'll get you to get your opinions on it also, but maybe also talk about maybe the, with Stronger Smarter being an Indigenous run and led organisation with AIME, what's the importance of organisations like us to be able to work together to create that change?
Yeah, thanks, brother. look, I suppose like tying it all together, you know, the teachers can, what's something that teachers should be thinking about? And we did a study in 2011 around what makes a deadly teacher. And Mahim, we use deadly over here as means good, so not bad. So when we say deadly, it means that's solid. So what makes a deadly teacher? You know, when you think back on who do you remember as which teachers do you remember and do you remember them? You know, and what can we do to become a deadly teacher in our kids' eyes? Do we even ask our kids what makes a deadly teacher? And the stuff that we pulled up in the study is friendly, supportive and approachable, promoting positive cultural identity, making learning interesting and fun, and making the learning challenging. You know, so that's some simple frames around what we can do to become deadly teachers. And yes, we have to teach content, and yes, we have to teach to the curriculum and structures and whatnot. But, you know, at the end of the day, teaching is something that is inherently personal. It is something that you are gifting to someone else's, and that gift of learning they give back to you. So how do we make it personal? And I think that's when we start then yarning about the relationships, Maddie, and talking about having orgs like AIME, who's been around working in the student mentoring space for a long time, and having organisations like Stronger Smarter Institute, who've been working in teacher education and working with building teacher capacity to respond to challenging contexts. You know, it makes sense. And then having us being Indigenous led and run organisations it's coming from a First Nations perspective. You know, and we know that the solutions lie with our people and our mob and our country. So why wouldn't we be looking at responding to these challenges by privileging First Nations voice and approaches in it? And I think the government is slowly starting to realise that that's going to be a more effective way of responding to challenges rather than what's been happening before. So partnering with an org like, you know, AIME's going to have a whole bunch of information and learnings around that mentoring experience and how to think outside the box. Where the Stronger Smarter Institute, we've got a whole lot of processes and information related to what does that mean pedagogically? What does it mean as the art of teaching? What does it mean? How do you navigate the system to be able to shift it and change it to a system that is more inclusive of all of it? You know, so we've got an organisation full of really, you've got two organisations there, one with all these deadly people around with all these solutions, and working together and moving forward is going to be something that we hope that's going to find, you know, not to use a net analogy, Jarryd, but you know, like how we're catching our kids and giving them that wraparound support, so we're not having our kids miss out on education through no fault of their own, but through a system that's not necessarily responding to them and their needs. So yeah, it's deadly the work, the IMAGI-NATION University, you know, and the work teachers can do and the scaffolds, because it's good to have these big ideas, these imaginations, but when you're in the trenches in the classroom and you've got all these documentations you've got to do, and you've got to respond to all the curriculum elements, and you're responding to your students on an individual needs and basis, how do we support our teachers who do want to change and do want things? And things like IMAGI-NATION University, things like Stronger Smarter training gives teachers that scaffolded support to realise their dreams, you know, and realise how they want to see the system shift. Because we know teachers work hard. We know they're doing the best they can with what got, but we need to give them other tools to really accelerate and expand whatever possible futures they can create in their context as well.
True, brother. Now, Emily, just to finish up, throw it over to you before we thank the panelists for joining us. But as a aspiring teacher and someone coming through, how do you best engage with your students?
I found in the last couple of practices that I've done at local schools, I found being raw and honest with your students is the best way to get anything done. I recently taught a year 11 class, and the first lesson I had, I was super nervous. I had technical difficulties at the start of the lesson, and like they barely knew me. So I stood up the front of the class and I told them that I was nervous and that we all like introduced ourselves. And I think they respected the fact that I was treating them like adults, that especially with those like high school students, they want that responsibility. They want to be accountable for their own learning and things like that. And I try my best to give that to them, to like for them to take control of their learning, and then like let me know what they need and things like that. Yeah.
Awesome, Emily. I think that might be coming to an end. I'd like to thank all the panelists for joining us today here on IMAGI-NATION TV. Emily, anything you have to say as my co-host for the day?
No, I think what everyone had to say was pretty amazing. We had some great insights into teaching and how the different institutes work to support teachers and resources and things, and it was great.
So I'd love to thank all our panelists for your insights and your knowledges. Grace and Mahim, Jarryd, Jesse, I really appreciate everyone's time. Emily, my beautiful co-host, thanks very much. I'm looking forward to all of us working together for a fairer world and making good in the world. Thank you.
Constantly keep picking up little bits about who I was and where I come from, and I think once I did that, my connection to where I come from and who I am as an Indigenous person just grew, and I felt that strength, and it really did empower me to the point that when people started to question me who I am as an Aboriginal person, I stand up and I say, no, that's wrong, you can't call me that. You cannot discriminate me on the colour of my skin or because I'm an Indigenous person of this country. For me, I was very, very lucky to follow in Mickey O's footsteps and do the show Who Do You Think You Are? And that's when I really, really got the opportunity to connect to my ancestors back in the Flinders Ranges. When all that booing stuff was happening and I took that time out, that's where I went. I went back to the Flinders Ranges. I put my feet in the soil in the riverbed there, and I reconnected to our people, to our ancestors, and that gave me the strength to finish that season. And I knew right then that was my time to retire. I never ever questioned an Indigenous person's journey on their own identity, because it's tough for any of those kids out there. You know, if you really question your own identity, go on that journey. Ask your aunties, uncles, elders, even your friends, and hopefully they can help you.